what are you seeing as far as just overall EC, substrate EC, where those values kind of lay for you? And are they different, and how different depending on the amount of light you're giving it, right?
Yeah, let me go on an annoyingly technical aside
Hell
here.
yeah.
Go ahead.
We'll cut this and it'll just be a good clip, right?
There's a lot of people will make recommendations for substrate EC levels that get misinterpreted because there's actually a lot of different substrate EC levels depending on the time of day, right?
Yeah.
So you might have your peak substrate EC, which will tend to be when your water content's lowest right before your first irrigation. And you might have your daytime low substrate EC, which is going to be after you've generated runoff, at the end of your P1 irrigations. And then you have your substrate EC during the majority of transpiring hours. And I think it's important to talk about those individually, because if one person says, yeah, your substrate EC should be, 10 at this time, and they're talking about their peak for the entire day, and another person's like, great, I'm just gonna make sure I'm 10 for the entire photosynthesis period of the day.
Right.
And that's a common mistake.
And they're probably measuring it during the day, right? And that dry back, you hit 15, 20 EC in your
Tyler's
substrate.
getting at is monumentally important.
Are you going to wake up and eat dinner? Or are you going to have breakfast and go through the day? Yeah, that's a good point.
So to continue this aside, I think what is most important in general is what EC is the plant experiencing during its main transpiration hours of the day. Because that's kind of what it's going to be feeling the most. So here's the thing, it's if you're using, Teros 12 sensors from Arroyo or something like that, where you're getting comparable readings, and some of the technology will be a little bit different, but if your substrate EC drops below 3.0, you're gonna have problems.
Yeah.
Those are gonna be plant deficiencies, slowed down growth, poor health, just if it's not happening already, it's gonna happen within a couple of days.
Okay.
So that's what I tell people is rule number one, just never let your substrate EC drop below 3.0.
Okay.
And then in terms of where do you want to hit for those different stages, it's very cultivar dependent, it's very light intensity dependent. So one of the things we think is super important and just that I see constantly is that if you are bringing your plants in from veg or even planting them in veg and you want to use higher light intensities, you just have to charge the substrate at a pretty high light intensity. Otherwise, your plants are going to grow slowly. So, for example, I'll tell you exactly what I'm doing in cocoa or in rockwool slabs. We're going to drip at 3.5 EC to charge our substrate. It's 3.3 to 3.5.
Okay.
And then we plant directly into that. And you can plant directly into that. Say it's a 1 gallon cocoa pot. When you have that much fertility in the substrate, you're going to see substrate ECs are going to be in the 3.5 to 4 range starting out. And you're going to get
veg.
Exactly.
Yeah, clone right into your final liner.
Straight into a 1 gallon pot.
3.3, 3.5.
Yep. Okay. And you can hit pretty high light intensities. I mean, if you're starting off right around 350, 400, ramping up to 600 or more, you can do that over the course of a few days to a week.
Yep.
If you have enough fertility to start. So you do that, and in 10 to 14 days, you can have a plant that's 18 inches tall and big. If you charge your substrate EC at 2.2 or something like that, then that time to get that plant that size is going to be twice as long.
Yep. And you're going to stress it if you keep acclimating it past a certain point, right?
For sure. You're going to have to be really slow and gradual with the acclimation. Just makes the plants really, really delicate if you don't have that substrate EC around that 3.5 to 4. So that's where I like to start for veg. For flower, the general strategy, as most people know, is we're going to try to have a little bit of a higher substrate EC during the stretch period. We're going to manipulate how easily the plant can access water with both the matrix potential and osmotic potential. So a little higher EC, maybe you're shooting for the 5 to 8 range as a safe range. And then during your middle bulking period of flower, you're going to drop it back down. You might be at 3 to 5 or 4 to 6, right around there. And then at the very end, it's going to be a mix. And this is like the interesting thing with high intensity lighting too, is as a lot of cultivators will notice, you'll have strains that just don't want to finish flowering sometimes under really high PPFDs. So this is when we start coordinating like every single signal to the plants at the same time. It's like we want to, change the light spectrum if we can. We want to change the distribution and switch to a ripening formula in the fertilizer. We want to have the substrate cues give generative signals. So in that sort of scenario, you might see some pretty high peak ECs, but also some pretty low, daytime low ECs with the runoff.
Letting them dry out more then is more or less what you're saying, or using irrigation to help with that strategy at least.
Yep. What I tell people sometimes is like, we're gonna do the kitchen sink strategy to get your really long flowering cultivars to finish. We're gonna change like lighting, CO2, daytime temperature difference,
every cue you can, right?
Exactly.
Like you're gonna finish.
Composition, irrigation strategy. It's just like force those plants to ripen on time.
100%.
I think working through the right cues and understanding your crop is a good technique and something we help our customers through.
Yeah, that's huge too. I mean, especially with people who can now with lights, LED lights, you can push those intensities, right? Before you would typically see heat stress before you got to that, almost blowout point.
Yep.